The first time Marcus touched me like that, I told myself it didn't mean anything. We were at my place on a Saturday night, sitting on the floor with takeout between us, halfway through a movie neither of us was really watching. That was normal for us. Marcus practically lived at my apartment anyway. If he wasn't at work or the gym, he was here. That's how it had been for the last 3 years. Best friends. Easy. Comfortable. No complications. At least, that's what I thought. I was reaching for my drink when his hand brushed mine. It wasn't unusual. We were sitting close, shoulders almost touching. But instead of pulling back right away, his fingers stayed there, resting against mine. For a second, I froze. Marcus didn't look at me. His eyes were still on the TV, his expression relaxed, like nothing was happening. Then his fingers shifted slightly. Slow, barely noticeable, like he was adjusting his hand. Except now his knuckles were pressed against my palm. I pulled my hand back and grabbed the drink. Sorry, he said casually, finally glancing over. It's fine, I answered, maybe a little too quickly. He nodded and went back to the movie. But I couldn't focus anymore. Because Marcus wasn't a touchy guy. Not with anyone. We met during our first semester of college. I was standing outside a lecture hall, staring at my schedule like it was written in another language, when this tall guy walked up next to me and said, "You also have no idea where you're supposed to be, right?" That was Marcus. Confident without being arrogant. Friendly without trying too hard. The kind of guy who made conversation feel easy. Somehow we just clicked. By sophomore year, we were inseparable. Study sessions turned into gym partners. Gym partners turned into weekend plans. Weekend plans turned into him crashing on my couch more nights than not. Now we were both 24, working full-time, living in the same city. Nothing about our friendship had changed. Until recently. After the movie night, I tried not to think about the hand thing. Guys bump into each other. Sit close. It happens. But then it kept happening. At the gym, Marcus spotted me while I was benching. When I sat up, he clapped my shoulder. Normal. Except his hand didn't come off right away. It slid down slowly across my chest, then gave a light squeeze. Looking bigger, he said. I laughed it off. That's the goal. But his hand lingered for a second longer than it needed to. Then he stepped back like nothing happened. A few days later, we were walking downtown after grabbing coffee. There was plenty of space on the sidewalk, but Marcus kept walking close enough that our arms brushed. Once, twice, 3 times. Each time, I shifted slightly to give us more room. Each time, he drifted closer again. Finally, his hand bumped mine and stayed there for half a step. Then another. Then his fingers lightly tapped against mine. Not grabbing, not holding, just there. I glanced at him. He was looking straight ahead, talking about something his coworker did, completely normal. Like he didn't even notice. Except Marcus noticed everything. The thing that really started messing with my head was that he wasn't like this with anyone else. I'd seen him with other friends. Quick handshakes, shoulder bumps, the usual guy stuff. But with me, it was different. Closer, slower, more deliberate. And once I noticed it, I couldn't stop noticing. The way his leg would press against mine when we sat next to each other. The way his hand would land on my back and stay there just a little too long. The way he'd lean in when he talked, even when he didn't need to. One night, things felt different. We were at my place again, both standing in the kitchen. I was reaching into the cabinet for plates when Marcus stepped in behind me. Closer than necessary. I could feel the heat from him at my back. Sorry, he said. But he didn't move. Instead, his hand came to my waist. Light. Barely there. Like he was steadying himself. Except there was nothing to steady against. My breath caught. He grabbed a plate with his other hand, then finally stepped back. The whole thing lasted maybe 3 seconds. But my heart was still racing when we sat down to eat. I kept telling myself it was accidental. That Marcus was just comfortable with me. That I was reading too much into it. But then, a few nights later, we were on the couch, scrolling through something to watch. He stretched his arm along the backrest, then slowly lowered it, until his fingers were resting lightly at the back of my neck. I went completely still. His thumb moved once. Just a small motion. Like he was brushing the skin there. "Owen," he said quietly. I turned to look at him. He was already watching me. And for the first time, I had the very clear feeling. None of this had been accidental. I didn't answer him right away. Marcus's fingers were still at the back of my neck. Not gripping. Not forcing anything. Just resting there like they belonged. Yeah. I managed. His thumb moved again. Slow. Almost absent-minded. "You ever feel like something's changed?" he asked. My stomach dropped. Changed how? He didn't look away. His eyes stayed locked on mine, steady, searching. I don't know. Just different. Different. That word had been hanging between us for weeks. I swallowed. You're the one who's been acting different. There. I said it. For a second, I thought he'd laugh it off. Make a joke. Break the tension. He didn't. Instead, his hand slid from the back of my neck down to my shoulder. Owen, he said again, quieter this time. Have I made you uncomfortable? That caught me off guard. Because the honest answer was complicated. You've been. I hesitated, trying to find the right word. Touchy. A corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Not amused. More like nervous. Yeah, he admitted. He didn't deny it. Didn't pretend it was accidental. My pulse started hammering in my ears. Why? I asked. He held my gaze for a long second. Then his hand slipped from my shoulder down my arm. Slowly. Intentionally. Until his fingers reached mine. He didn't grab them. Just brushed them. Because I wanted to see if you'd pull away, he said. That hit harder than I expected. And I asked, my voice lower now. You didn't. We were still sitting close. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of his leg against mine. I thought maybe I was imagining it. I admitted. All the accidental stuff. Marcus let out a quiet breath, almost a laugh. None of it was accidental. Hearing him say it out loud made everything feel sharper. Real. So what is this? I asked. He looked down at our hands for a second, then back at me. I don't know, he said honestly. I just know that lately, when I'm around you, I don't want to keep pretending I don't feel it. My heart skipped. Feel what? His fingers finally laced through mine. And this time, he didn't pretend. You. The word barely left his mouth. The room felt smaller. Quieter. Like the world outside my apartment didn't exist anymore. You've never. I started, then stopped. Been with a guy? He finished. I nodded. He shook his head slightly. Neither have I. That made something tighten in my chest. So why now? I asked. Marcus hesitated. Because you're not just anyone, he said. You're Owen. It sounded simple. But the way he said it, it wasn't. I've been trying to ignore it for months, he continued. Every time I sit next to you. Every time you laugh. Every time you look at me like you're trying to figure me out. I was trying to figure you out, I said. I know. He squeezed my hand gently. I didn't want to mess this up, he added. You're my best friend. That was the part that scared me too. What if we do? I asked quietly. He leaned in slightly. Not enough to touch. Just enough that I could feel his breath. Then we deal with it, he said. But I'm tired of pretending I don't want to touch you. The honesty in his voice made my chest ache. For weeks, I'd been waiting for him to make a move. Waiting for confirmation that I wasn't crazy. Now I had it. And I wasn't pulling away. Marcus's thumb traced lightly over my knuckles. Tell me to stop, he said softly. I looked at him. At the guy who had been by my side for 3 years. Who knew how I took my coffee. Who'd seen me at my worst and still stuck around. My best friend. And the truth was, I didn't want him to stop. So instead of answering, I shifted closer. His eyes flicked down to my mouth for a split second. That was new. Marcus, I breathed. Yeah. If we do this, we can't pretend it's an accident anymore. He leaned closer, our foreheads almost touching now. I don't want it to be an accident. And when he closed the last bit of distance between us, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't messy. It was slow, deliberate, just like every accidental touch that had led us here. The first kiss lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it felt longer. Marcus didn't rush it. His hand came up slowly, resting against the side of my neck, like he was giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. I didn't. When he pulled back, we stayed close. Foreheads almost touching. Neither of us spoke. I could hear his breathing. Fast. Uneven. Okay, he said quietly. I let out a nervous laugh. That's all you've got? Okay. He huffed a breath, the corner of his mouth lifting. I'm trying not to freak out. That makes 2 of us. We were still holding hands. Neither of us had let go. For a moment, things felt awkward. Not bad. Just unfamiliar. Marcus leaned back slightly, studying my face like he was trying to read my reaction. You good? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. Then, after a second, you? He nodded too, slower. Yeah. I just didn't know if you'd actually go for it. I raised an eyebrow. You've been touching me for weeks. His expression shifted, a little sheepish. I know. I just didn't know if you were letting it happen because you liked it, or because you didn't know how to tell me to stop. That hit closer than I expected. I was waiting for you to admit it wasn't accidental, I said. Marcus let out a quiet laugh. So we were both just testing each other? Pretty much. The tension in the room eased a little, but the awareness between us didn't go away. If anything, it got stronger. We went back to sitting on the couch, but it wasn't the same. There was space between us now. Not physical space. Unspoken space. The kind that comes after something changes and neither person knows what the new rules are. Marcus looked at the TV, then back at me. Then, slowly, he moved closer. Not all at once. Just enough that our shoulders touched again. "Still okay?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer. Instead, I leaned into him. That seemed to be all the permission he needed. His arm slid around my shoulders, pulling me in against his side. It felt natural. Too natural. Like this position had been waiting for us the whole time. We didn't kiss again that night. That part surprised me. Instead, we just stayed like that, talking about random things. Watching half an episode of something neither of us paid attention to. Every now and then, his fingers would move, tracing slow patterns against my arm. Light, absent-minded, but not accidental. And this time, he wasn't pretending it was. Around midnight, Marcus shifted. "I should probably head home," he said. I looked up at him. "You don't have to." That came out faster than I expected. He studied my face for a second. "You sure?" he asked. I nodded. He hesitated. Then, "Couch or your bed?" That question sent a small jolt through my chest. Normally, he'd crash on the couch without asking. But now it meant something. "Bed's bigger," I said, trying to sound casual. Marcus held my gaze for a second longer than necessary. "Okay." We didn't talk much while getting ready for sleep. The quiet felt heavier now. Not awkward, just full of awareness. When we got into bed, we both stayed on our sides at first, facing opposite directions. A few inches of space between us. I could feel the heat of him behind me. For a minute, nothing happened. Then the mattress shifted. His arm slid around my waist. Slow, careful, like he was giving me time to stop him. I didn't. Instead, I relaxed back against him. His chest pressed lightly to my back. His hand rested flat against my stomach. No grabbing, no rushing, just holding. After a few seconds, he let out a quiet breath against the back of my neck. "Okay," he whispered again. I smiled a little into the darkness. "Yeah," I said softly, because for the first time, all those accidental touches didn't feel confusing anymore. They finally made sense. And lying there with Marcus holding me like it was the most natural thing in the world, I realized something that scared me more than the kiss. I wasn't just curious. I didn't just like the attention. I was already falling for him. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because anything was happening, because nothing was. Marcus's arm stayed around my waist the whole time. His breathing was slow and steady behind me, warm against the back of my neck. Every once in a while, his fingers would shift slightly, like he was adjusting in his sleep, pulling me a little closer without even realizing it. It should have felt strange. Instead, it felt right. Too right. And that was the part that kept my mind racing. In the morning, I woke up before him. The sunlight was coming through the blinds, the room quiet except for his breathing behind me. His arm was still there, his hand resting flat against my stomach. For a second, I didn't move. I just stayed there, aware of every point where we were touching. Then he stirred. His hand tightened slightly, instinctively, like he was holding on to something. Or someone. "Owen," he mumbled, voice still rough with sleep. "Yeah," I said quietly. He went still for a second. Then his arms slowly loosened, like reality was catching up to him. "You're still here," he said. I turned onto my back to look at him. Where else would I be? Marcus blinked a few times, focusing. Then a small, relieved smile appeared. "Good," he said. That word did something to my chest. The moment should have been awkward. It wasn't. We stayed there for a minute, just looking at each other. Close enough that I could see the faint crease between his brows, the way his hair was sticking up on one side. Then his eyes flicked down to my mouth. That awareness came back instantly. The same quiet tension from the night before. "You regret it?" he asked. I didn't even have to think. "No." His shoulders relaxed a little. "Me neither," he said. But he still didn't move. Like he was waiting. I understood why. Everything felt fragile now. One wrong move, one wrong assumption, and we could make this weird, complicated, break something that had taken years to build. So I made the first move. I shifted closer. His hand came up automatically, resting against my side. Then I kissed him. This one wasn't hesitant like the first. Still slow, still careful, but there was less uncertainty. Marcus responded immediately, his hand sliding from my side to the back of my neck, holding me there gently. Not pulling, just keeping me close. When we pulled back, we were both breathing a little heavier. He let out a quiet laugh. Okay. I rolled my eyes. You need a new word. I'm serious, he said, smiling. I just didn't expect to wake up, and this still feel right. It does feel right, I admitted. That was the scary part. It didn't feel like something new. It felt like something that had been building for a long time. We stayed in bed longer than we planned, just talking. About when this started. About the touches. The accidents. Marcus admitted he'd noticed his feelings months ago. I kept telling myself it was just because we spend so much time together, he said. Then I started looking for excuses to touch you. I noticed, I said. He smirked slightly. You didn't pull away. I didn't want to. That made his expression soften. But I was scared, I added. You're my best friend. If I got it wrong. Same, he said quietly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Because that was the risk sitting between us. Still was. Later that day, we went out to grab coffee like we always did. That's when it hit me. Everything looked normal. Same cafe. Same table. Same drinks. But under the table, Marcus's knee rested against mine. And this time, neither of us pretended it was accidental. When the barista called our names, Marcus stood first. As I got up, his hand brushed my lower back. Light. Familiar. But now I knew exactly what it meant. Outside, we walked side by side. Our hands bumped once. Then again. Then his fingers hooked loosely around mine. Not fully holding. Just enough that I could pull away if I wanted to. I didn't. I turned my hand and laced our fingers together. Marcus looked over at me, surprised. Then he smiled. And in that moment, walking down the street like that, it hit me. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. This wasn't just experimenting. My best friend hadn't just started touching me accidentally. He'd been reaching for me. And now I was reaching back. Holding his hand in public shouldn't have felt like such a big deal. It wasn't like we were making out in the middle of the sidewalk. We were just walking, fingers laced, close enough that our shoulders brushed every few steps. But for us, it was everything. Marcus didn't let go until we reached my building. Even in the elevator, he kept his hand wrapped around mine, like if he released it, something might snap back to the way it used to be. When we stepped into my apartment, the door clicked shut behind us. The air shifted instantly. No crowd, no street noise, no distractions. Just us. Marcus let out a slow breath and finally dropped my hand. Not because he wanted to, because he was thinking. You okay? I asked. Yeah, he said, running a hand through his hair. This is real now. I leaned against the counter. It was real last night. I know. He looked at me. But now it's not just in your apartment. Or in your bed. It's out there. I understood what he meant. We hadn't talked about labels. We hadn't talked about what this made us. We'd just been feeling it. You don't have to figure everything out today, I said. He stepped closer. I'm not trying to figure it all out, he said quietly. I just don't want to lose you. That hit me in the chest. You're not going to, I said. You don't know that. Marcus. He stopped pacing and looked at me. We've been through worse than awkward feelings, I said. This isn't going to break us. He studied my face like he was searching for any hesitation. You really don't regret it? He asked again. I walked toward him this time. Closed the space. No, I said firmly. Then I reached up and kissed him. This kiss was different again. Not cautious. Not testing. It felt like confirmation. Marcus's hands settled at my waist, firm but steady. He pulled me closer, like he'd been waiting all morning to do that without second-guessing himself. There was something almost relieved about the way he kissed me, like the tension of the past few months was finally releasing. When we pulled apart, he didn't step back. His forehead rested against mine. You have no idea how long I've wanted to do that without pretending it was an accident, he murmured. I let out a small laugh. You were terrible at pretending, by the way. He smirked. You noticed. I noticed when you kept brushing your hand against mine like you were checking if I'd move. I was, he admitted. And every time you didn't pull away, I felt a little braver. That did something to me, because I hadn't realized that my silence had meant that much to him. We ended up back on the couch. Except this time, there was no space between us. Marcus sat close, one arm around my shoulders, my leg thrown over his. No pretending, no subtlety. And weirdly, it didn't feel forced. It felt like a version of us that had been trying to exist for a while. I keep thinking about what happens next, he said after a while. Next as in? I asked. Are we dating? Are we just seeing where it goes? Do we tell people? There it was. The practical side. I thought about it for a second. We don't have to decide everything today, I said. But I know one thing. What? I don't want to go back to pretending. Marcus's grip tightened slightly. Me neither. He was quiet for a second, then added, I don't want this to be a phase, Owen. It's not, I said. How do you know? Because of the way my chest tightened when he looked at me. Because of how natural it felt to sit like this. Because I wasn't scared of what it meant. I was scared of losing it. Because I've never wanted anyone else to keep touching me like I want you to, I admitted. He went still. Then he smiled in a way I hadn't seen before. Soft. Almost vulnerable. You're making this very hard for me to act cool, he said. You've never been cool, I shot back. He laughed and nudged me. Later that evening, when he stood up to leave, there was a pause at the door. The same doorway where we'd said goodbye 100 times before. Except now, it felt different. Come here, he said. I stepped closer. He kissed me once. Slow. Intentional. Not rushed. Not hidden. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine again. No more accidents, he said quietly. I smiled. No more accidents. And as he walked down the hallway, I realized something. The touches hadn't been mistakes. They'd been courage. Small, careful steps towards something neither of us had known how to say out loud. Until now, things didn't change overnight. That was the strange part. After everything that had happened, after the kisses, the hand-holding, the whole no more accidents conversation, our daily routine still looked almost the same. Marcus still came over after work. We still ordered takeout. Still argued about what to watch. Still went to the gym together. But underneath all of it, there was this quiet shift. Everything felt closer, more intentional. The first real difference showed up at the gym. Normally, Marcus would spot me, give the usual quick shoulder clap when I finished a set, and move on. That day, after my last rep, I sat up and caught my breath. Good? I asked. Instead of answering, he stepped closer. His hand landed on my shoulder, then slid down slowly across my chest. Same motion he'd done weeks ago. Except this time, he didn't pretend it was just a quick check. His hand stayed there for a second. His eyes met mine. Yeah, he said quietly. Good. My heart did that stupid tight thing again. Because now there was no confusion. No guessing. No pretending. Later, in the locker room, we were changing like usual. This was something we'd done 100 times before without thinking about it. But now I was suddenly aware of everything. The space between us. The way he moved. The fact that he kept glancing over, like he was just as aware as I was. Feels weird now, doesn't it? He said finally. I looked up. What does? He gestured vaguely between us. This. Acting like nothing's different. It is different, I said. He nodded slowly. Yeah, he agreed. But I don't want it to be awkward. It's not awkward, I said. He gave me a look. You've looked at the same locker for 30 seconds. I sighed. Okay, maybe a little. That made him laugh. The tension eased immediately. That was still us. No matter what had changed. The bigger moment came a few days later. We were out with friends. Same group we'd been hanging out with for years. Drinks, loud music, everyone packed around a table. Normally, Marcus and I would sit next to each other anyway. That night, he slid into the seat beside me. And without thinking, his hand rested on my thigh under the table. Not subtle, not accidental. I froze for half a second. Then I relaxed. Because I knew what it meant. He wasn't hiding from me. But he wasn't making a scene either. Just keeping contact. Like he needed that connection there. Throughout the night, his thumb moved occasionally. Small, slow motions. Grounding. Every time someone laughed or leaned over the table, he didn't pull his hand away. That quiet confidence did something to me. Because Marcus wasn't testing anymore. He was choosing. When we got back to my apartment that night, the energy between us felt heavier. Not tense. Just charged. Marcus closed the door behind us and leaned against it for a second. You okay with earlier? He asked. The table thing. I said. He nodded. I liked it, I admitted. Relief crossed his face. I didn't want you to feel like I was pushing anything, he said. When you're close, I want to touch you. The honesty in that hit harder than anything physical. I stepped closer. You don't have to ask every time, I said. His eyes searched mine. Yeah. That seemed to be the permission he needed. His hands settled at my waist, pulling me in slowly. No hesitation. No testing. Just steady. Comfortable. We stood like that for a minute without kissing. That part surprised me. Marcus rested his forehead against mine, his hands still warm at my sides. You know what's weird? he said quietly. What? This doesn't feel new. I nodded. Because it isn't, I said. You've been reaching for me for months. He huffed a small laugh. Yeah, I just didn't know if you'd ever reach back. I slid my hands up his arms, resting them at his shoulders. I am now. That's when he kissed me. Slow, unrushed, like he finally wasn't worried about crossing a line. Later, when we were lying on the couch, his arm around me like it belonged there, Marcus spoke again. I keep thinking about something. What? If this keeps going the way it is? I looked up at him. Yeah. I'm not going to be able to pretend you're just my best friend anymore. I held his gaze. Good, I said. Because the truth was, somewhere between the accidental touches and the quiet moments like this, he wasn't just my best friend anymore either. And for the first time, that didn't scare me. It felt like exactly where we were supposed to end up. The moment it really hit me happened on a random Tuesday. Nothing dramatic. No big confession. No intense conversation. Marcus was just in my kitchen, standing barefoot in front of the fridge, holding a carton of orange juice like he lived there. Which, at this point, he kind of did. How do you keep running out of food? He asked. Because you eat half of it, I said from the couch. He smirked, grabbed a glass, and poured himself a drink like the place belonged to him. That's when it clicked. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't us trying something. This was already becoming our normal. The changes had been slow. So slow I hadn't noticed them at first. Marcus leaving a spare hoodie here. His phone charger permanently plugged in next to my bed. The way he'd show up after work without texting first. The way his hand would find me automatically whenever we sat next to each other. Not testing. Not checking. Just reaching. Like it was instinct now. That night, we were on the couch like usual. Except instead of sitting side by side, Marcus was stretched out with his head in my lap, scrolling through something on his phone. Every now and then, my fingers would move through his hair without thinking. At some point, he grabbed my wrist and pressed a quick kiss to the inside of it. Casual. Absent-minded. Like it wasn't a big deal. That did something to my chest. Marcus, I said quietly. He looked up. Yeah. You realize you're not acting like my best friend anymore. He studied my face for a second. Then he smiled. Good. I raised an eyebrow. Good. I don't want to be just your best friend, he said. The way he said it wasn't dramatic. It was simple, certain, like he'd already made that decision. I let that sit for a moment. Then what are you? I asked. Marcus pushed himself up so he was sitting next to me again. Close. Knee pressed against mine. His hand automatically settling on my leg. I think I'm the guy who fell for you before you even realized what was happening, he said. That caught me off guard. How long? I asked. He thought about it. Honestly, he said. Probably when I started looking for excuses to touch you. I laughed softly. That was months ago. I know. His thumb moved slowly against my knee. I kept hoping you'd notice, he said. I did notice, I admitted. Then why didn't you say anything? Because I was scared. Because you were my best friend. Because I didn't want to lose you. But instead, I said the honest part. Because I was starting to feel it too. Marcus went quiet. Not surprised. Just softer. After a second, he leaned in and kissed me. Not urgent. Not intense. Just steady. Familiar. When he pulled back, he stayed close, his forehead resting against mine like he'd done so many times now. So, he said quietly. So, I echoed. Are we going to say it or keep pretending we're just figuring things out? I knew what he meant. For weeks, we'd been moving forward without naming it, without defining it, because saying it out loud made it real. I took a breath. Marcus, I said. Yeah, I think you're my boyfriend. For a second, he just looked at me. Then he broke into the biggest, most relieved smile I'd ever seen on him. Good, he said. Because you've been acting like mine for a while. Later that night, after he fell asleep with his arm around me like always, I lay there thinking about how this had started. All the small moments. The accidental touches. The way his hand would linger. The way he'd walk just a little too close. The way he'd been reaching for me long before either of us admitted why. None of it had been random. None of it had been a mistake. It had been him. Taking small risks. Waiting for me to reach back. And now, lying there with his arm around me. His breathing slow and steady against my shoulder. I realized something. My best friend hadn't just started touching me accidentally. He'd been falling for me. And somewhere between the confusion, the hesitation, and the quiet moments in between, I'd fallen for him too.